Welcome to another episode of Low Tech Garage, and we are back on the C3 Corvette today. For those of you that might be new to the channel, the C3 Corvette is just a visitor, but it's coming in for a full suspension overhaul. This car is extremely original and has been well loved throughout its life, but with being original, there are some parts that are quite tired on it, and we are working to overhaul the complete suspension on the car. So what does that mean? It means new bushings, new ball joints, new tie rod ends, you name it. We're going through the entire suspension and taking care of everything so it rides like it did when it left the factory. And with that, I finally got a bushing press that did have the thread cut so we can get on to pushing new bushings into the control arms and get this project underway. All right guys, well, quick update. I was able to rent one of these bushing presses locally because of the defective one I received. So I have it set up here, picking up where we left off before. So I just have the adapter and the little push right here. It is on the new bushing. We have our wrench, and so I'm gonna ratchet this and it will press slowly but surely, I hope, the bushing all the way in up to this collar right here. And then we'll come over this side, repeat the same process. Some of my eagle eye viewers may notice, I managed to get the hardware here, got myself some nice grade 8 hardware, have a spring washer on the underside and a nylock nut, so they should be rock solid as well. So I'm gonna set you guys up and we are gonna get this thing installed. All right, well, there we have it. This is a fully rebuilt upper control arm. Brand new bushing here. Great shape, no damage because of the right tool. Same here. There are the little end caps we got to put on. So I haven't forgotten those. I need to bolt those on, obviously. And then we have the new ball joint here. Grade 8 hardware with nylock nuts and spring washers, nice and tight. Got this, which is rock solid and brand new. So we are pretty much good to go with this one. So I'm gonna get the end caps on this and then we can move on to the next step. All right guys, well I thought I'd give you a quick walk underneath the back of the Corvette now. All the rear suspension is done. So I think this is probably a good view. So all brand new bushings, all torqued to spec with cotter pins. These lower arms, same thing, all torqued to spec. Here, up in here. I did set the camber back to how it was when I took it all apart, but we will get this aligned. Then we have the shock in as well. And then as we come around, we can see it nicely done here. And then when you come here as well, we have the pinion bushing done as well. So everything in the back is complete. And that means no more excuses. It's time to get on with the front end. As you saw, I got that first upper control arm done. So we're gonna have to get that reinstalled and do a little bit of shuffling around so that we can get this lower control arm out. So I'm gonna lower the car down and we'll get to it. All right guys, well, we made a little more progress last night. I rebuilt the inner and outer tie rod ends. Pretty straightforward job. Just undo the nuts here on each end. Undo the old ones. This does have a left-hand thread on one side, so just something to keep in mind. You know, you got to thread it the opposite way. I went ahead and basically set these how the old ones came off. So the depth is pretty close. Like I said, though, the car will be getting in alignment. So we have these. They're ready to install. So we'll go over to the car. We're going to clean up the center link a little bit. And then, yeah, we'll pop these on and we'll be one step closer to having all the steering done. And I have to say, it is just something rewarding about putting new parts on a car, giving everything a clean, getting that years of dirt and grease off of the old components, and just giving the underside a complete refresh. And I am super excited to see how this thing drives once it's all back together. So let's hop under here, get that center link all cleaned up, and we'll get these installed. And just to give you guys a reminder of what we're working with under here, yeah, quite a lot of grease that had kind of leaked from the old ball joints. So we're just gonna wipe these down here and here. I did also install the new idler arm already. So I think you guys remember that was just 2 bolts up here. So obviously none of this is torqued up yet, just in place, but you get the idea of the new pieces going on already. All right, well, if that wasn't so bad, these are just kind of loosely bolted up right now. Same goes over here. Kind of like the rear, we'll torque everything up once it's done. These will also be adjusted so they can go up into the steering knuckles as well. But with that, next step is actually going to be lowering the car down, and we need to get this lower control arm off. You guys probably remember we have this threaded rod holding the spring in place right now. What we're going to do, install the upper control arm back up here. We're going to put the knuckle assembly back on, and then we're going to reset this rod right here to hold the spring above the lower control arm. And from there, we're going to drop the lower control arm out. So quite a bit of work to do that, but let's get started. All right, well, here we are. Upper control arm is in. Nice new ball joint. Let me show you in the engine bay how it's set up. And here we are, and kind of like removal, it is a tight squeeze. But here's the control arm. Here are the studs it rides on. It's done up tight, but not torqued up. You can see I put the alignment shims back in, front and rear, just how they were when we took this all apart. So our alignment should be pretty close for us to get back on the road. So next up, I'm gonna raise the car up a little bit, and we're gonna get this knuckle with the rotor back on temporarily. We're just gonna hold that on loose, but it will allow us to reset the coil spring and hold it in a different place so we can get that lower control arm off and really get moving on this project. All right, guys, well, things got a little out of hand yesterday afternoon, and I admittedly did not document this very well. So I will show you when we get to the other side, but we have the lower control arm out. So let's jump over to the bench and we can see what we're working with. And here it is. So lower control arm, this is the spring pocket. I did do a little scraping here just to get all the years of buildup off, and I did take the nut off of the ball joint here. So similar to the upper, we have some OE rivets that we need to grind out and then punch out, and then hopefully this ball joint can come out right here. And then the other piece of the project, these lovely condition bushings, we're gonna press these out and press a new set in as well. So quick update, old ball joint is removed. As we can see, this thing was completely dead. Should not do that. Yeah, we drilled out the rivets, punched them out, and we were able to get this thing out. So that's a great success. On the bushings, I was testing out how to press out the bushing using the installer and remover tool. And then I was going to show you on the other one. But what I found is it did push the bushing out. However, it appears the rod here is somewhat seized on part of the bushing sleeve in here. So yeah, unique situation. I'm going to get my grinder and cut the bushing, and hopefully we can split this off and try and get to the inner sleeve and get that off. My guess is, as you can see, we have rust on these, so I'm guessing this thing's rusted solid. Not exactly what we want. So let's see if we can cut this, and then I'll see what I can do to show you how to get this bushing out over here. The second ones are always a little easier because honestly, if you just cut this rubber back and whack it with a hammer a few times, then they tend to come out. But we need to address this first. So let's get to it. All right, so I got it off. Let me show you. Basically, like I said, extremely rusty. So it was basically rusted to the bushing. So yeah, extremely rusty. It was rusted to the bushing. So I'm gonna sand this down. We'll put just a tiny bit of WD-40 on here just so there's some little level of lubrication, and we should be good to go. All right, so next up, this guy right here. Just gonna try and cut some of the rubber off like we did on the upper control arm. Let's use a knife. The whole reason for this is just so we can get a good hit on the metal sleeve here. That seems to be what'll get things moving when it comes to punching these out. There we go. Try and cut a little bit more off. All right, let's see if that does the trick. I think for this, I'm actually gonna take it out of the vise. If you guys recall, I had a nice little device for doing this. Okay, so after some investigation and trial and error, I think we're gonna press this one out too. These are not as easy to work with as the upper control arms. They're a little bigger, and they're just a little more in there. And as we have the right tool for the job, we may as well use it. So let's give this thing a try. This one's a lot of work though. All right, well, as soon as I turned the camera off, this thing came out. So, yeah, the real issue, oh, there you go, all this rust, it was just binding up on it. So once we got through that, we were free. So what does that mean? We find ourselves with a stripped down control arm. So I'm gonna get the bench cleaned up here, and then we're gonna get some new parts ready. We'll be ready to reassemble. Here we go. And now for the rest of its life, you won't have to pound out rivets to change the ball joints. Kind of makes you realize why people left the original ones in for so long, because not the easiest of jobs to change out. But once you do it once, you're good to go. Okay, that is nice and tight. That is also nice and tight. I'll leave this on. And like that. Boom. New ball joint. All right, guys, well, let the fun begin. We've got the beam back in. We got the bushing here. Got the other one in the back right here. So we're gonna start using the press. Press these bad boys in, and we will have a complete lower control arm. All right, well, it's in. That was a mission. Just super tight fit on this, but we got it in with the press, a little bit of brute force. We now have our brand new bushing in both sides. So we'll get this little guy right here pushed in, and on to the last one. that, we have the completed control arm. So, no more paired bushings. Nice, pliable. That's kind of how it should be. We've got our nice ball joint down here as well. So, this is a complete rebuilt control arm. Ready to go back in the car. So I'm really excited with the progress. It's a lot of work getting those bushings trucked out, the ball joints, drilling them out, everything like that. It's pretty slow going. Well worth the effort. So I'm gonna head over to the car. I'm gonna take the control arm with me. Have the fun of pressing the coil spring back up, getting the arm in place, back on the chassis. So let's get over to the car and get on with it. All right, guys. Well, I got a little carried away last night getting this lower control arm on. So I thought I'd give you an idea of what we've done. So obviously we've seen upper control arm has been in with the new ball joint bushings. So we built the lower control arm, same thing, ball joint bushings. What we've done is all this disassembly. I have my threaded rod here. And when we come down here, I'm using this to hold up the spring and the lower control arm. And just slowly but surely did this nut up. It's good to lubricate this so that it doesn't wind up the tension of the spring. And then as we got within a few inches back here, I used my jack with the trusty 4x4, and I really just used it to kind of push and guide this piece of the control arm up. So as you can see, that is now nice and bolted in here. Fundamentally, the lower control arm is now in, and we're upward, which is a huge step. You can see this is still tied off. I said before, don't worry if this is a crazy tension on this brake line, it's fine. We are going to get the knuckle assembly. We're going to put it on the lower ball joint here, get the nut on, and then looking at this space, we're going to have to still raise the lower control arm up some. This will pull down a little, but not much. We'll get the bolt on here as well. We will have a completed front side. We can then put the caliper on, put the outer tie rod on. We are really moving along. Right, and here we have it, folks. We have an assembled front corner. You guys may have noticed I made a little misstep at the beginning. I actually moved the caliper back over here to be out of the way. I had it tied up by the front like this for a reason, because the caliper is on the front side on these. So I had to, snake it through between the knuckle and the control arms, which is a little detour for me, but no big deal. But we are all set here. Get the light again. We can take a look. We've got the outer tie rods in, inner tie rod in, idler arm in. Obviously you've already seen this, but we've got the upper ball joint done. And then if we tuck around here, there's the lower ball joint as well. So caliper's also on, obviously. The last step on this corner is going to be putting the new KYB shock in. So I'm gonna work on that now. It's a little snug in here, so I will probably just come back and show it to you once I'm done, but it's pretty straightforward. There's just a couple holes, you can kind of see them down there in the bottom of the control arm where the hardware goes through. And then there's just the stud up here at the top. I don't know if we can, we can sneak you guys in. There you go. It goes through the top there. So not too complicated. So I'm gonna get this shock in, and then we're gonna bounce over to the other side, and we are on the home stretch. That is the last corner on the car to be done. All right, gang, well, here it is. Shock absorbers installed. Like I said, pretty straightforward, just a couple bolts at the bottom. And then we got the one poking up through here. So that is officially everything on this side other than the sway bar and links right here on the car. Those will be the last things to go on once all the suspension's done. I'm gonna hop over to the other side. I'm gonna take everything apart. We're gonna get the upper and lower control arms on the bench so we can disassemble all of them all at once and then rebuild them. And then what I'll do, I'll bring you guys back over when I'm putting the lower control arm on, because I do want to show you how to do that. It took me a little bit to figure out how to do it, but once I figured it out, it was pretty straightforward. So I'll see you guys in a little bit. I'll do an update once I got everything over on the bench. A few hours behind the scenes of work, but we have new ball joint and new bushings pressed in, and here, here, and here, and here. And just to give you guys a better overview of everything, we are ready to put these back in the car. So I'm gonna snake these in, specifically the upper, get that all seated, and then I will show you guys how to compress the coil spring and the lower control arm to get that reinstalled, so you get the idea of how that goes back together. And then we're gonna get cranking to get the last of the suspension done. All right, so as promised, I wanted to show you how to get the lower control arm in. So we have our threaded rod that you saw me use for removal of this stuff. We are using it for reinstallation as well. So this is tucked up here. You can see it going through where the shock mount is. I have a couple washers and a nut on the top there, and then it comes all the way through the frame, through the coil spring right here, and then out underneath. And I have this nice thick piece of steel. It's a piece from a puller I have. And then I have another couple washers and a nut right here. And what I've done, the cable ties, that just makes sure the spring is seated as expected in the little cup in the bottom here. We don't want it rotating around because that can mess with how the spring sits and potentially your ride height, things like that. So this is holding us where we need to go. I've lifted this up so it's seated nicely up top here, and it's seated here. So we have a little bit of tension on it. And really what we need to do is now just slowly but surely tighten this up, and it will compress the spring and bring the whole arm up. When I've done this before is we come underneath. As you can see right now, we probably have, I don't know, 5 inches or so between the bolt up here and the arm that needs to locate it. So we're gonna compress this a bit, and then what I did before, and I'll show you when I'm doing it, I put a piece of wood under here and we just pushed it with the jack gently, and it basically lifted the arm the last few inches to get the hardware in once we had the spring compressed enough. So I'm gonna compress the spring some more, and then you'll find me back here probably once I've got the wood under here, just to show you what we're doing. Well folks, it took me quite a while to go through and make sure everything was torqued to spec. You can see my little yellow paint marks everywhere. But we've gone through the whole suspension, everything I replaced, made sure everything is torqued up nicely. So you can see all the new ball joints, the new sway bar bushings, any new bushings, new shocks, inner and outer tie rods on this end, equally on this end, all the new stuff here, the shock peeking out. And obviously on this side, we also did the idler arm as well. So needless to say, I'm really glad that I'm at this milestone. There is a little bit more to do on the car. Primarily, I need to just put some of the things back together in the engine bay that I had to take off to get access to the upper control arms. So I imagine it's a little bit more work, but it shouldn't take me too long, and we will have this thing back on the ground. So I'm gonna lower the car down a little bit and get stuck in. And just like that, folks, this beautiful Corvette is back on the ground with all new suspension and ready to hit the road. And I have to say, this thing is quite the looker, and I am super excited to get this thing out on the road and see how she drives. So I know this is a little bit of a detour from our normal Jag Land Rover content, but I wanted to get you guys to see what I have been up to behind the scenes on this car. I do expect to see it coming in and out of the shop a couple more times, as the owner has a few other plans that they've asked for help on. So I'll be sure to share that with you guys. But drop me a comment, let me know what you think of the content on this, what your thoughts are, anything about the C3. I'm happy to answer questions from what I learned while doing this restoration work. If you are new to the channel and came this way because of the Corvette content, don't you worry, I have plenty more muscle car content coming very soon. Lurking just over my shoulder there is my 65 Mustang with a little bit of work pending. And of course, I don't know if we'd really call this a muscle car. We got the Viper lurking back there as well. And for my European car fans, don't you worry, the Jag's sitting here. I'm finishing up a video right now on this one too that will be coming on the heels of the Corvette content. So more Jag content coming very soon, as well as the Land Rover coming back in the shop. And last but certainly not least, the 928 is getting ready to get stuck in with. As you can see, there are already 928 parts here, and we are on the lift. So there is going to be a flurry of activity coming on this finally after a few years. And just as a little teaser, we got a bunch of parts here. We might even have a spare V8 engine over here for another future project. And then lurking on my secret mystery shelf under the stairs, this is all new parts for the Viper. I have a pretty awesome upgrade that I plan to do on that later this year as well. So thank you all for watching. Hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and certainly drop me a comment. I always enjoy engaging with all you folks. But until then, I will see you all on the next episode.